All right, so I am very excited to introduce, I think I already had a little thunder stolen here, but to close out our day, Mark Gillum. Mark is the Vice President of Rebate Strategy at N-able, and he's going to walk you through how to use rebates to drive meaningful behaviors and business outcomes. So please welcome Mark to the stage.
Wow, no Trump in this presentation, and very little, in fact, I think hardly any AI either, but lots of rebates. So the first thing, we've talked about rebates today. We've talked about, I think, all the good things about them, maybe some of the more challenging things about them. Just as a show of hands, who in this room loves rebates? Anybody? Oh dear. Because here's the problem. I love rebates. A lot of you don't. And that is because they're polarizing. I suppose we're all here today because if they were perfect, we wouldn't need any help with them. And what I want to do is I want to change the narrative. I've taken it upon myself personally to change the way we do business, one rebate at a time. It's going to take a little while, but we will get there. So, how are we going to change how we operate with rebates? What are we going to do? Well, we have to start somewhere. So I want to start here. And so, this is called the rebate rush. Does anybody recognize this demand profile? Whether you're a distributor or a manufacturer, the year's going smoothly, we get towards the end of the year and we think, oh, I want all of that extra rebate. So we get the rebate rush. We pick loads of orders in, and then at the beginning of the following year, we don't buy anything. I know from first-hand experience as a distributor, that wasn't good for us. Our warehouse guys hated us. They would probably damage half the stuff because they're just sticking it anywhere. And I'm pretty certain that the manufacturers that we were dealing with really didn't like this either. But that happens. What we're going to talk about today is how to stop this. But to get there, we have to go on a journey. We're going to go on a little exciting world about how do we get away from a rebate rush. So you can't just fix the rush, you can fix other things. So we're going to look for some inspiration. What we're going to do here is we're going to look to Formula One, because Formula One does things very well. Formula One is at kind of the top end of performance. And that's where we want to be as kind of rebate professionals. We want to be the Formula One of commercial agreements, but we've got a bit of a journey to go to get there. So let's look at what Formula One does. So to start, we're just going to make this a little bit interactive. So on this side of the room, just looking for a volunteer. Anybody want to be in my team rebate Formula One team? Anybody want to be in the team? Just need one driver. Don't worry, you don't have to come on the stage. I just need your name. That is it. Graham, I knew it would be you, Graham. Okay, Graham, you are in my team rebate Formula One. Okay. This side of the room, whoever wants to put their hand up, is going to be in team Formula One. So you're actually going to be a driver of a real Formula One team. Who wants to be in that team? Anybody want to put far corner there? Yes, sir. What's your name? AK. AK. Okay, wonderful. Sounds very Formula One driverish, that name. And you are in the right team. You are too, Graham, honestly. So, it's an hour before the race, Graham, okay? We know, we've seen it all on the TV, the drivers are getting their last-minute briefs on how to win this race. And what I want to do, as I'm talking through this, picture how we manage rebates, okay? So Graham, you've got this. Don't panic. Just nail it. Foot down, fast as you can. You'll win this race. Yeah? Are you happy with that? Got everything you need? Perfect. AK, we've been looking at the data, and what we've worked out is this track doesn't suit us. The first half of the race, we need you to actually take it easy. Because in the second half of the race, if you look after your tyres, the race will come back to us. Turns 3 and 5, you're going to be a bit slow on them, so take defensive positions. Make sure you don't get overtaken on those bends. Otherwise, we'll just keep you informed as the race is going on. But does that sound fair? If you're about 3rd position, so anywhere between 3rd and 5th, going into the second half of the race, we think you can win this. How does that sound? Good enough brief? If you need anything else, let us know. Yeah? You got this. So, we're halfway through the race. Good news is, Graham, you're first. You have been thrashing it. Yeah? You are, but you're noticing that the other teams are now starting to catch up with you. A little bit nervous, but don't worry, we've got you. Got your back, bro. What we're going to do here is, whether you want to send me an email, call me, whatever, I've got you. So, you need a bit more data, not a problem. So, there you are. I hope you've brought your emails, because I'm going to send you a spreadsheet. Okay? If you can work it out, by the way, you're actually starting to slow down in all areas, but you've got the data you now need to realize that you're not going to win the race. Okay? But I've sent you it. Okay? If you can get through your mailbox, it's there. Okay? Don't panic. AK, slightly different for you. Your Formula One team, they haven't sent you a spreadsheet. In fact, they've hardly told you anything. Because what they've done is they've turned around to you and said, AK, the plan is working, you followed the instruction, but actually what we need you to do, we've been observing that on turn 7, you're braking 10 yards too early. It's costing you a fraction of a second. Look out for that. Don't worry about car number 4, whoever they are. They're going to be a bit faster than you for the next bit, but then they have to pit. So just ignore them. Don't even race with them. And you're going to win this race. You're like, well, sounds simple enough. That's good. I've got everything I need to win this race. I'm a bit confused as to why that driver, Graham, at the front has got his laptop open. But, hey, if we don't need that, we don't need that. So, long story short here, what are we giving our drivers, the people who are negotiating these rebates? Are we telling them exactly what they need to do? Or are we giving them kind of war and peace and overloading them? And are we really giving them direction? And then we sit there and we struggle, and we're scratching our heads like, why on earth did they negotiate this? Well, I'm sorry, but if we didn't tell them to do anything different, or we didn't give them any guidance, one thing I can guarantee, and I'm going to say both sides of the coin here, salespeople love to be creative because they want the sale. Procurement people love to be creative because they want to reduce the cost. You put the two together, and yeah, it's really good for rebate professionals. Complexity is, they seem to think it's their friend, and if you're an accountant like me, well, we like complexity because that's how we justify our jobs, but it's generally, once things get too complicated, we lose sight of the commerciality. So keeping it simple and giving people the tools, just go back to your business and think, what are we doing? Are we letting Graham just put his foot to the floor and then questioning him when maybe he doesn't win the race? Or are we doing are we giving AK the support he needs, which is not overloading him with information, it's telling him purely what he needs to do his job. But on that point, and I'm deviating from my track here to something that was said earlier, how do we trust? Think about it, Formula One drivers. I mean, I know they do challenge at times, but They trust the information they're being given. And that it takes time to get to that. And so we've got to educate our businesses and get them to trust the information we're giving. When they don't trust us, they ask for the spreadsheet. They ask for the more information. We need to slowly get them away from that, and that will help them then trust the AI and other technologies as well. So thank you, gentlemen. The good news is, Rachel, I believe, I've learned the art of presenting. What it means is if you give things away, you get better reviews. So Graham, look at that. You can now make your own racing car. And AK, I can't go in front of the speaker, so I have to come all this way to the back. Here we go. This is, I feel like Michael McIntyre. There we go. Thank you so much. So we've learned about Formula One. We can hopefully take a few learnings from that. But to summarize, what do? They start with data. They have a data center. Cars collect lots of data. They've got lots of external data. They don't give that to the driver. That is something that they don't even give to the pit wall. The next thing they have is information. So data is just ones and zeros. Information is things like lap times, brake temperatures, all of the things that actually where we turn the ones and zeros into something more. Unfortunately, we tend to stop there in business. We don't go to the next two tiers that really add the value. Next thing is knowledge. I know. So I know when we brake 10 yards earlier, we are slower in that corner. It's very different to a lap time. Knowing something is really important. That's when we're at the pit wall. That's the guys supporting the driver. They have knowledge. What they turn knowledge into is the most powerful thing. The most powerful thing is wisdom. Wisdom is taking what you know and being able to do something with it. So we expand on, I know if we brake 10 yards earlier, we will go fast around that bend, or 10 yards later. Wisdom is actually a really short message. And so what we need to do is feed the decision makers within our organizations with more wisdom, which means, yes, we have to do the data piece, but actually the true value and the true power is not sending a spreadsheet to a driver, not giving them sentences and reports. It's just telling them one line. Hey, when you're out and you're talking to your customers, did you know X, Y, Z? Because we think they would buy that. Just something like that. That's what Formula One and a lot of sporting teams do really well. So the next piece, and what's really important is, when we think of incentives and we think of all of this, we're thinking about people. It's very easy to get drawn into the data, the profit, but ultimately, when we think of businesses, businesses are not the ones making the decisions, it's the people within them. And people are changing. I do dispute this slide because I'm certain that baby boomers ride on scooters as well. But baby boomers very focused on growth and security. And I apologize for the boomers in the room who will say, nope, that's not us. This is a generalization. But if we think of all the old rebate agreements we've seen, growth rebates, more growth rebates. If you'd like some to vary it, put a bit more growth into it. It's growth, growth, growth. That's all we've seen in most of the rebate agreements. Why? Because boomers negotiated most of the agreements we've inherited. We've now got the Ys and the Zs, and is it the Alphas coming through? I mean, they've got a cool name, Alphas. They're definitely, I wish I could be in that group. But the Ys and the Zs look at things slightly differently. We know there's a lot more about sustainability and innovation. So when we're thinking about what we're incentivizing, You've got to think about the person you're speaking to and what's really motivating them. What do they want to do, both personally and professionally? And so what may have motivated or incentivized the behavior in the past might not now. So we've got the people. Here's a really useful piece. The other thing as well is that I mentioned growth. So it's probably the word that I've struggled with the most in incentives, because there's a lot more than growth, and growth isn't always possible. Hence why it's not one of my key pillars of things you can incentivize. You incentivize demand. Now, you might want demand to go up, so you might want growth, but not everywhere. There might be products you want to sell less of. But there's lots of other levers you can pull. Some of them are cheaper as well. Growth is probably one of the most expensive things to incentivize. Because if you are growing and you want to grow faster than the market, you're taking market share, which means you're taking it from somebody. They're not just going to let you do it. So growth is expensive. There's lots of other things you can look at when you're negotiating with your trading partner. How can we be more efficient together? What can I do, whether it's to take things through central distribution, make one order per week, reduce our invoice queries, improve our product mix is probably one of the most powerful levers you can pull. Do more of the business that makes both of us more money. Things like loyalty and retention are really important and a key reason we use rebates. It's really important that you consider how you structure these things. Because whether it is a quarterly rebate, an annual rebate, a multi-year rebate, whether you pay it by credit note, you pay it by cash, how you do these things affects the stickiness of the instrument that you're putting in place. So there's lots and lots there beyond growth. Don't think of rebates as just tools for growth. And when we think about rebates, then we talk about optimization. Like anything in life, if you put enough money somewhere, you're generally going to get what you want. And so I think about rebates as bang for your buck, and this is very much if you're paying out a rebate. If I want the customer to do something, and I just say, well, I'll give you a 10% rebate, I mean, in some industries, that'll be amazing. In others, not so good. But let's think of it in a real world. Let's think about, I'm going to get somebody to, clean my house. Not that they would have to. My wife's one of these people who cleans before the cleaners come. So, but let's say you want to clean a house. What would we say is a par number to have an average house cleaned? What, £500? To top and bottom, inside and out, looking really nice, let's say. So we plot on the chart, £500 is an average number. I can pay less. And what I'm thinking here is, well, if I pay less, the performance will just go down. So I turn around and say, okay, so I'll pay £100. And I'm talking here, this is like probably 2 or 3 days' work to get this house ship-shape and ready to be sold or something like that. Problem is, when I pay that, I get hardly any performance. So it's not following the line. I put maybe £200 on the table. Now I'm talking, I'm getting a bit of a performance, but I'm not following the line. Pay the 500, I get the middle. I pay 700, gets better, maybe 1,000. Pay 1,500, it starts to plateau out again. I'm not getting a return on what I'm spending for the job I want done. I'm not getting a return for the rebate I'm putting on the table. Where you want to be when you're offering rebates is in the sweet spot, which is there, where every single extra dollar, pound, whatever you pay out, you get the maximum amount of performance from your customer. Either end, you're not as efficient. You can work this out when you're trying to incentivize. There are times when you're just paying way too much. And so if you've done the economics of the agreement, you would understand actually We don't want to be there. We want to be in the middle. So when you do, to get value for money, that's where you put your tiers. All your tiers are on the steepest part of the curve. And it means that the customer's always got something to go for. Even if you kind of model it and they're going to be in the middle, you might want to consider, especially with economic volatility, it's that having that carrot that's always in front of the customer. If they're having a bad year, you still want them to be incentivized. If they're having a good year, you still want them to be incentivized. So think about this, because whenever you see, if you spend $1 million, I'll give you 5%, there's a good chance there's no optimization there. It's purely two numbers plucked out of the air. This type of thing you can do, but you need to see what your data's telling you. So we'll go through a little story now. Manufacturer, distributor. Every time I present, I always do something for the numbers people. What we've got here is a story of two parties. These are real numbers again, and I do share the slides afterwards so you can check my maths. Two parties who have got a bit of a problem. Problem they've got is, and again, you can tell I'm biased because the manufacturer's making all the profit and the distributor not so. Got a manufacturer making just over 30%, and the distributor's making only just shy of 13. And the distributor's in a bit of a painful position here because the distributor is, what they're selling, this supply chain is printers. And if you all remember, printers used to be really cheap, and it was the cartridges that you had to pay a fortune for. There's a lot of industries like that. And so what we've got here is a manufacturer selling 500,000 units, and the distributor's selling them on, but the distributor's not making much money. The distributor's gone to the manufacturer and said, hey, I need to be at 18%. That's what I make on your competitors. How do we get there? This is what happens at the end. So the distributor has gone from 12.8 to 18. They've got a 6% rebate. They are over the moon. They're very happy. Now, you can imagine, you see this and you think, oh, well, that's great, Mark, but what's happened to the manufacturer? Well, guess what? My magic accounting has made it so that the manufacturer's gross profit stays at 30.6, and they've got a 6% rebate going out. And so we wonder, well, how's he done this? Well, we were selling printers. The problem we had was the distributor can sell two things. They can sell just a printer, or they can sell a printer and a cartridge. The margin is in the cartridge. However, there's a whole new industry out there now where you can go to printer store online, buy cheap cartridges, and you just buy the printer. So the market is being disrupted, which is hurting the distributor, but it's also hurting the manufacturer in terms of volume. So this is where we were before. They were selling 60% of what that distributor sold was just in printers with no cartridge, and 40% with a cartridge. But look at the margin difference. Just the printer, 24%. When you add the cartridge, you're up to nearly 38%. The key here is we're not looking at growth. We're purely looking at a mix-based shift. This is the manufacturer afterwards. We put 10%, I've just said no growth, but we put 10% growth in, just as a market thing. It's almost irrelevant for the margin percentage. The ratio has moved, and I accept it's a big shift, but it didn't have to be in one step. Even on a ratio, you can take steps. You could say, well, if you're at 60-40, this is the rate. When you get to 50-50, this is the next rate. 60-40 the other way. So you can tier a mix as well. All the way up to, ultimately, 100% of what you sell has a cartridge in it, and you can work out what that number is and reward the distributor for it. Simplicity, again, is our friend here. That's the term. Didn't need pages and pages. purely, we'll give you 6%, 550,000 units, of which 73% are bundles. Because one of the biggest challenges you'll have is if you make rebate schemes complicated, it's really difficult for your customer and sometimes yourself to work out what are we trying to achieve here. The end result, manufacturer, revenue is up 12.9% because there's more of the more expensive bundles going through. Gross profit has risen as well. They're up 3.7 million. But look at the distributor in this scenario. Distributors' sales are up 20-odd%. Gross profit's up 9.5 million. Now, I'm not saying that that would have to be the end scenario. If you're the manufacturer, you can decide if you want a bit more of this benefit for yourself. And coming back to when I showed the curve, you want to work out, well, where is the sweet spot? I don't want to pay more than I need to. It's just an illustration of what is possible with rebates beyond the simple growth annual rebate. Taking the circle right back, the detail. We remember this, avoiding the rebate rush. And this is really timely because I had a conversation yesterday with my good friends from SHP about rebates and how we structure them. And I did say this would be in the slide, so it was great you asked this. We get this profile. Why do we get this profile? We get this profile because that's where the target is. That's when we cut off. It's like anything, studying for an exam. I was always one of those people who waited to the last minute. It's the same with buying. It's not a problem until it's tomorrow. That's what we've targeted. That's what we're going to get. We avoid this. Quarterly rebates, quarterly targets. It means as well that in economic uncertainty, if a customer misses a quarter, they can go straight back at it the next quarter. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but they're not locked in for as long. Potentially, but what you can do here, they can earn quarter one. Doesn't mean you have to pay them it in quarter one. You can just bank that money and say, well, actually, you still get paid that at the end of the year, but now you've earned it. It's locked in. It also means that if you do price increases and your rebates are based on values, you can restate a target a lot easier next quarter as opposed to having to wait until the end of the year and potentially the customer gets paid a rebate purely because you gave them a price increase. From a distributor perspective, this gives us more flexibility as well. It's not always going to be a win-win, but it's an idea. So summarizing, we've got to get to wisdom. The numbers are really important. And actually, what we target potentially has unintended consequences, so let's think about what we're truly asking for. We get there with a reset. Andrew mentioned it earlier. Reset is really important because we've been doing things for a long time, and I think we're at that point where we're thinking, well, it's got to change. A reset for me is reflecting. So reflecting on what do we actually want? What does good look like? Forget everything that you currently know and what you're targeting. In a perfect world, what would we like? What would we like our customers to be doing? What would we like our suppliers to be doing? And then the next thing is to evaluate. Where are we currently? So this is a bit like gap analysis. Where are we right now? What do the numbers tell us? Then we strategize, bridging the gap. What do we need to do differently to get to where we want to be? The next slide, engineer. This was the hardest one because I did try and put it in a reset, but I got there. Engineer. So engineer is the tactical phase. That is, what are we specifically going to do? What type of rebates should we be offering? What type of conversations should we be having with our trading partners? And then finally, we transform. But we don't stop. We keep going. We keep going. It's a cycle that just continues. It's how we build rebates that actually work more for us based on our objectives as opposed to what's just a product of a negotiation. Why do we want to transform? Because, hey, I said, rebates are, I love them. They're awesome. They're the strategy, the foundation of a partnership. I do believe that a good rebate is not the product of a fierce negotiation. It should be the foundation of a partnership. And so we're trying to define a new chapter for rebates, a more positive one. I think rebates, when structured correctly, are not just a reward. They're a way of saying thank you. They encourage collaboration. And they're a way of sharing success. And so when we look back and we think, what did we take away from this? What was Mark's real message? Bar the Formula One. It was, I want people to think, well, this is the conference where we're starting to make changes. This is when we're thinking differently about rebates. This is when we're stopping thinking they're a cost to do business, a necessary evil. The reality is that in some cases they are, but only people like us can change this. So I want this to be the conference that changed things. I want this to be the reset. Thank you.